Welcome to Deloitte's On Cloud podcast, the show that cuts through the noise to bring you practical insights on cloud, AI, software engineering, and more. Tune in for real-world tech strategies to lead in the age of disruption. Now here's your host, Gary Aurora.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the On Cloud podcast. I'm your host, Gary Aurora, Chief Architect for Cloud and AI Solutions here at Deloitte. We often talk about technologies reshaping our world. Gen AI, cloud computing, AI agents. But what happens when these powerful tools meet something as fundamental as how we get around? Today we are exploring something that's quietly shaping your life in ways you might not realize. Transportation. It's more than just roads, cars, or trains. It's the invisible thread connecting how we live, work, and interact every day. We are joined by two incredible experts, Kristen White, Google Head of Transportation Strategy and Partnership, and former Head of the Federal Highway Administration, and Justin Porter, who leads Innovative Transportation Initiatives at Deloitte. And they both sit at the intersection of technology and transportation. So whether you're a tech executive, an urban planner, or simply curious about the future we are building, stay tuned. This episode has insights for everyone. Kristen, Justin, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here with my colleague and good friend, Justin.
All right, let's start with the big picture. So, Kristen, your career has focused on making transportation safer, smarter, and more accessible. And you've often said it's more than just roads and vehicles. So for our listeners in the tech world, why should they pay attention to what's happening in transportation? Because it may seem different from their jobs. What basic ideas or connection in transportation are important for everyone to understand, no matter what kind of tech they work on?
Thanks, Gary. And I think it's important to start on the why of what we do in our work. In transportation, we're doing our jobs if you're not thinking about it. So when you're getting into your car and you're able to get to work on time without stress, if you're able to afford your ticket to get on a bus and the bus schedule's running on time, if you're able to get to the airport and your flight is on schedule and you have the information you need to see your families and friends, that's us doing our job. But right now, there's a pandemic in the country where over 42,000 people are dying every year in road fatalities. It is a pandemic, and that is unacceptable. But we don't talk about it because we aren't telling what I call our transportation story. And Justin and I have talked about this. The two of us are in this space because it's deeply personal and passionate for us. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, died in a car crash. My dad's best friend, when I was 17, died in a semi-tractor crash. I had 3 friends out of a 4-person family in high school died in a drunk driving crash. And guess what? The technologies that Justin at Deloitte and my work at Google are doing literally could have prevented those fatalities, and those people would still be in our lives. So that's the why, right? It is not just about cool tech or cool gadgets or artificial intelligence or whatever the big transformation of the period or epoch is. It's the fact that we are connecting communities. And how extraordinary is it that part of my story, despite my family losing a lot of people, I know my life's mission is to keep people safe. And some of the work that Justin and I have gotten to do together is developing artificial intelligence and applications that literally can predict where crashes are, prevent people from getting into those incidents, and helping transportation agencies do everything they can with their limited resources and overworked staff and public servants to keep people safe and connected.
Thanks for articulating the why, Kristen. I can feel the passion you have to address this problem. Let me turn to Justin. Traffic congestion is worsening across many cities, often faster than traditional planning methods can keep up. Road safety, especially for pedestrians and cyclists, is becoming an urgent concern. And these challenges are interconnected. How are AI-powered tools here helping transportation planners, engineers to tackle these issues in practical and actionable ways?
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary, thanks for having me, and thanks for having Kristen and I join on such a really exciting topic. I mean, just like Kristen mentioned, this is extremely personal to me. I was a kid who went to college knowing that I loved maps and wanting to do something in the world with that. And trying to navigate what that meant and figuring out how I could connect my worlds of transportation and my worlds of mapping. And so that's sort of what's led me to this geospatial intersection using AI tools. And I think traditionally, right, like Kristen was alluding to, there's extremely limited resources in any agency that focuses on transportation. And it's no different than any other agency around the country. What's different is these challenges are exacerbated because we have more vehicles on the road. We have more folks who are commuting and taking more trips, right? If COVID taught us anything, all of our trip dynamics have now changed, and it's not necessarily in a safer way. And so, you've got more instances of speeding, you've got more instances of pedestrians and cyclists being impacted, right? And our typical approaches to this require heavy community engagement. They require heavy studies of these locations. It requires a lot of back and forth and almost bargaining between agencies and pulling together money to try and solve this, right? And it pits projects against each other, which is not great when you're trying to solve safety at every level, right? And so, AI in particular, Gen AI being one way of applying this, can help you not only identify those incidents involving pedestrians, cyclists, and enable faster emergency response, potentially save lives, but it also can help you develop predictive safety analytics. And I think this is where the real value comes in, right? Because beyond just reacting to what's actually happened at an intersection or changing something after someone has passed, you can now actually try and get into that preventative stage. And this is where we want to be as a country. This is where we want to be as professionals, especially professionals in technology. We want to be able to predict where this is going to happen and anticipate how we could actually make a difference if we had the right information.
And I want to extend your expertise and lessons learned to other industries. You have led projects combining AI, Gen AI, and transportation planning. So from your experience, what are the biggest misconceptions executives may have when implementing these advanced technologies? And how can leaders approach AI innovations more effectively?
Absolutely. I mean, as all of us who are working in this space experience today, there's a lot of misconceptions about AI and technology anyways. But I think the biggest misconception that we're seeing is that there's this black box that's going to suddenly give you the right answer. And that just doesn't exist, right? And our approach focuses on the end user. It focuses on folks who do this every single day. They wake up, they write these reports, they go and acquire the funding, they deliver it, they measure it, right? Our focus is on those folks and improving their lives and improving their processes. And so I think executives are hopeful that this kind of technology can intersect between all of those different end users, but that it can also connect agency-wide. You're able to look at this information more clearly and have a single source of truth as you're solving it. But I actually think the biggest misconception is what we struggle with the public. Like Kristen was saying, right? There's folks who do this and they wake up every single day working to repair our roads, to fix the maintenance that's backlogged for several years in some places, right? And solve for safety on a very tactical way. And the misconception with the public is that there's no one really focused on transportation. It's more like a byproduct. But in fact, that's not true, right? There are folks who are trying to improve this every step of the way. And it's not always seen, right? It's not always concrete. It's not always pouring, a new intersection or a new sidewalk. It's sometimes much larger than that. And it's looking for those trends. And it's looking for ways to make improvements across the board, not just in one specific neighborhood. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions around technology and transportation in general, but hopefully AI, Gen AI can actually help unlock some of those conversations in a way that everyone's actually democratizing the same information.
Yeah, I like that. Transportation, when it works, often is an afterthought. And with AI and Gen AI, you're able to bring a lot of the local insights at the state level, right? Christian, in your work, you have frequently emphasized the importance of human-centered design. Could you share some examples where HCD principles significantly improved outcomes And then explain how leaders in other industries could use similar approaches to address their own pressing challenges.
Absolutely, Gary. And this is a topic I'm really passionate about. I actually moved very recently to Google's headquarters in Mountain View, just south of Palo Alto, where at Stanford, human-centered design was pioneered in the late 50s, early 60s, because this is something that all our listeners should be aware of. And I might ask even a rhetorical question for our listeners. If they are unfamiliar with human-centered design, and if they cannot recite the 6 steps in human-centered design, we have a lot of work to do, Gary, Justin, and friends, to really embed this into our work. And so I'll share the first step, which Justin actually already articulated. If any one of our listeners are already steeped in HCD, the first step in human-centered design is empathy. It's called empathetic inquiry. It's literally asking, what are the problems in your day? What are the pain points? What are the points of joy? And in transportation, or in any one sector like ours in transportation, then we try and figure out, okay, so what are the transportation pain points? And it might even be those that I just mentioned at the top of our conversation, right? I can't afford it. There's pothole. It's really unsafe for me to cross this street, so I actually have to cross mid-block. What are you doing to help? And so we go then and have these workshops with communities, with end users, to understand what those issues are with using human empathy. And the second step is really refining the problem statement, because too often in any industry, we want to jump to problem solving. We are problem solvers in our industries, right? We are leaders. We want to fix things, make it better, but we don't take enough time to ask, are we actually solving the problem that our communities want us to solve? And I'll share a good example. I used to lead Minnesota State, the state government's innovation department in transportation. And one of the challenges we were seeing is in and around the Mayo Clinic, it's really hard to get access to the Mayo Clinic. Lots of visitors, tens of thousands visit each year. So we wanted to deploy autonomous vehicles. And we bought and deployed and did some R&D, research and development, on a fleet of autonomous vehicles. And we did a lot of community engagement. I was trying to really embed our human-centered design. And after a year of community engagement, and in our first quarter of deployment, I had a wheelchair user come up and say, hey, I know you tried to make these wheelchair accessible, but you only thought about 3 different types of mobility devices. My mobility device doesn't have a pneumatic system that allows me to get higher or lower depending upon how I need to enter the bus. And so you know what? I can't even get to the Mayo Clinic, even though you tried to do everything you did. And so it's just a reminder that we have to continue to ask, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And the third step in human-centered design that I think really resonated with me in that interaction with a really lovely human who took time to teach me was, we need to brainstorm the art of the possible. Because if you first empathize with someone and then second try and refine the problem, you still have to ideate every single potential solution so that you can come up with the best possible outcome. And honestly, Gary, we didn't in that particular use case. In that project, we had just a couple ideas that we thought would work. We did not take time to brainstorm the art of the possible. And what a lovely idea for whether it's Deloitte and Google or any one of our customers. We need to take time to just brainstorm and be creative so that we can really help our customers be successful and solve the problems we're talking about today.
What I love about this conversation is that everything you have mentioned is applicable across industries. You had me taking notes through this. Empathetic inquiry, understanding the pain points of your end users, refining the problem statement, instead of just jumping into problem solving, pausing to ask if this is the right problem behind the pain points or just symptoms. But thank you for sharing this. Continuing our theme of insights that we can apply across, let me ask you this, Kristen. Transportation projects often involve coordinating multiple stakeholders. You have your agencies, you have private companies, you have communities. It can be really challenging to align their interests, especially around innovative technologies like AI. So what are some biggest hurdles you have seen in building effective multi-stakeholder partnership? And the reason I'm asking this question is because the commercial sector could really learn a lot from your experience. There's always a new product being launched, a new strategy being rolled out. So what are some practical approaches that executives across industry could apply when trying to authentically engage multiple groups, whether it's customers, employees, or external partners?
I love this question, Gary. Our industry is not always humble, and I love Google's value systems. We have a value statement that talks about think big, act small, stay humble. We do not know everything in the room. And just in reference to tool that I use and incorporate in my organizations and work, that's very helpful, almost as helpful as human-centered design. And that tool is another acronym. It's called IAP2. The International Association for Public Participation actually has a model of public engagement. It's called a spectrum of public participation that literally gives us the tools on how to engage various stakeholders. And on the far left side is what we do too often in our industries, is tell people what we're going to do to them. And the other thing is we just tell them, here's the solution we've come up with. And friends, listeners who are listening to us right now, I really need us to remember to check our egos at the door. We are not experts in the lived experience of the people we're trying to solve, and we need to listen to them and empower them.
Think big, act small, stay humble. Love it. Justin, anything to add here from your experiences navigating technology innovation across government, public, and private stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kristen, I love the mention of IAP2. It's so funny as a certified urban planner. It's sort of drilled in our minds, right? Learn public engagement, learn the ladder, right? Learn the prioritization, and it's totally true. And actually, I found it really challenging to apply some of these frameworks that have been around for decades, right, to our work. And it's because technology projects don't follow an empathy-driven model, right? We follow a lot of models where it's either you launch something out into the public, you get some feedback and you fix it, or you try and do that up front and you still launch something, right? But the idea is there's some sort of vessel for everyone to use, and that's the mouthpiece. But in the reality, everyone has a mouthpiece in all of this, and those voices have to be part of this conversation, right? Our transportation experiences are all very different, I can guarantee you, but they all sort of root at the same challenges over and over again, right? Kristen was mentioning her personal connection to transportation. I mean, for me, I was a delivery driver for 5 years, and that was my full-time job after college, right? And so I have this very deep understanding of how difficult it is to get around, to have short-term parking, to, navigate several different buildings and several different places around a community, all on a quick time frame, but also knowing that that is driving my income, right? And I'm trying to find the best way to do it. I'm trying to find the best route to get there. And all of those things, whether it's a commute to work or whether it's part of your job, they have downstream implications because no one has thought through my personal journey, right? As a driver, no one has thought about how that's going to work. And I see it play out every single time I get into a TNC, right? I ask the driver, why are you doing this, right? What are the reasons behind why you want to do this? Do you actually enjoy this? And I think for a lot of people, again, it's just that means of enjoying transportation or taking part in the transportation ecosystem, but the why has to come through, because until that why comes through, we're not solving for some of these critical challenges.
I like that the transportation problems you're solving today are so rooted in your personal experiences as delivery driver, did you say, and finding those parking spots? The lived experiences, I think, really ground your why, and that is coming through. Let me ask you both this. Kristen, let's start with you. What's one emerging trend or new technology in transportation that is genuinely exciting you, something you believe could positively reshape not just mobility, but how we all connect, collaborate, and thrive?
It's a great question, Gary. And as a recovering lawyer and former chief counsel, I'm actually going to punt and not answer the question, because I'm a fundamental believer that we don't have technology problems, we have people and process problems. And so what I would like to share with our listeners is it's not about any one technology. I do think we need to be very knowledgeable and cognizant of artificial intelligence, of its amazing potential, but also of its unintended consequences and impacts. But what I'd like us to really think about is how we can help transform and enable our public sector agencies to use technology. And so as a former government official and former lawyer leading legal teams, one of the biggest challenges we see is procurement and contracting with technology partners and to acquire technology, or even requests for proposals that assume any one technology application may work, when instead I would offer we need more challenge-based procurement. And there are many, many models out there. More organizations need to do requests for, instead of information, RFIs, requests for innovation, and just have short lists of technologies and providers and people who can help advise you. And so I'm sorry to not answer your question. Of course, artificial intelligence is a part of this holistic storyline, Gary, but I'd really like to see us have more processes internal to government agencies that help them be more innovative internally.
No, you already said it a lot. You said we don't have technology problems, we have people and process problems, so nothing else is needed. Justin, what are you most excited about?
Oh, there's so many things. It's hard to really even focus on one specific thing. I mean, even just spending a decade now working in transportation, there's a new hype every couple of years, right? There's a new innovation. There's a new thing that's now impacting our lived environment, our built environment. And I think for me, I'm most excited about the collaboration that we've had, both Deloitte and Google, on solving some of these challenges. I think I'm most excited that more people, I don't want to say waking up to this, but more people are actively participating in this conversation around transportation, right? It's no longer these executives at the top. It's no longer just the folks who are actually delivering the work on the ground, but there's a lot of middle ground now that is sort of closed. And it's because we're all seeing before and after impacts of these things. We all have better access to information and better access to data than we ever have before. And so I'm really excited about how this access can actually drive us to make meaningful change, and not only change for, through technology, but change that everyone can understand. And I think democratizing that information, opening up that access, using technologies that can allow you to ask questions rather than learning to be a coder or learning to be a geospatial analyst or learning to be, an engineer, right? You can actually do all of those things. And, let it be known, right? Kristen and I are both of those things and many of those things. And the point of overlapping these circles is that's where transportation lies. And so I'm most excited that there's more voices in the tent. There's more people all together at the table now. And our experiences are not the same. And I think it's literally going to take all of us to solve some of these issues, especially safety.
And Gary, if I may, this is why many of us at Google call Justin Professor Justin, because we want to say, preach, friend. He is absolutely on point, and I learned a lot from him. And folks are really lucky to learn from this Google-Deloitte partnership.
Love it. Really well put. More people are actually participating into this conversation thanks to the accessibility of data and analytics. I agree that this is going to drive the meaningful change that this sector needs. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the On Cloud podcast. A big thank you to our guests, Christian White of Google and Justin Porter of Deloitte. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also check out our past episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Thanks for listening to the On Cloud podcast. Until next time, I'm Gary Arora.
You've been listening to Deloitte's On Cloud podcast. Share this episode, subscribe, and join the conversation. And tune in next time for more real-world tech insights and strategies. Until then, keep innovating, keep leading.
This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, go to deloitte.com/about.